Welcome back. All right, so I wanted to talk about AEW for a while. AEW, when it first came out, I had to watch it every week. Even through pandemic, when you didn't have the fans, I was still watching it every week. Sometimes I would fast forward to certain segments, but I was always like, hey, I want to watch AEW. It's fun. AEW, I thought it had better wrestling than WWE did. I thought that some of the feuds were better than what WWE was offering at the time. But things have really changed over the years now, and AEW, it's a tough watch right now. So I've enjoyed some segments I've watched from AEW, and thankfully they put them all up on YouTube, so I can usually find the segment I'm looking for. But it does mean I'm not watching Dynamite at this point, and it is something to get through. And what's weird is that in the beginning, the 2 hours of Dynamite flew by, and you'd be like, "Wow, that was a great show. That was so much fun." And now, not as much. So I want to go through why. And I know that at the bottom is the reason that a lot of this is falling apart. And it's too bad because there's a lot of really good talent in AEW. I think you could make the argument AEW is just as deep with talent as WWE. I don't know that they know how to book it. I don't know that they know what to do with it. And I think they sit on some huge names. Like you look at Jade Cargill in WWE right now and what a megastar she is. Well, she was in AEW for how long? Now, that also shows that it's better to have two companies because I've seen people cheering for the demise of AEW. And I want to say at the start of this, I am not cheering for the demise of any wrestling company. I don't want to see wrestlers losing jobs. I don't want to see them not having a choice. I don't want to see them just either WWE or nothing because in the past that has been the issue. And I don't want to see that come back. But I'm getting concerned that AEW is having problems, not because of anything WWE is doing, but because they keep shooting themselves in the foot. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the booking decisions. Wardlow was huge. Give him the belt. Nope. He just went away. And this is a problem they have where wrestlers just disappear for months. They're just gone. And then all of a sudden they're back. Ta-da! Miro comes out that way. Now, also, you'll notice Jericho's on the board. Not because he disappears and comes back, but because Chris Jericho at this point, I don't know if it's overkill. I don't know if it's overexposure. Chris Jericho used to be my favorite wrestler. Absolutely, bar none. I thought Jericho was fantastic. Now, I don't know. It all feels like we've seen it before. So when somebody's in a feud with Chris Jericho, I just kind of sigh and think to myself, well, once they're done with this feud, we'll see how it works. And right now, that's what, Hook? They have the whole, and they tried making the Jera Hook thing happen. No, thank you. But yeah, Wardlow should have been champ. Wasn't. MJF being champ was great, and then they went to Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe's fine. Samoa Joe's fine as a champion. But if you're AEW and you're trying to elevate your company, and people say, "Hey, look what we're doing over here," Samoa Joe is as respected as he is, and again, I like Samoa Joe. He's not a needle mover. You need somebody who's going to move that needle. Ironically, Cody Rhodes finishing his story in WWE proves AEW botched it with Cody Rhodes too. Part of it was Cody Rhodes was one of the original EVPs, right? So when he won, everybody went, ugh. Of course, because he's the EVP, he gets the belt. Not understanding that he had the belt because he's a good wrestler. So I think part of it is not on the board either. Part of it is a lot of the AEW fan base. Well, we have that internet group that we all kind of know the inside workings of the company. And so I do think that hurts the product in the ring. I think that Tony Khan's well aware that fans know what's going back. Let's swerve them a little bit. Let's don't even get me into Swerve Strickland and how much I think they're botching him right now either. And like understanding the crowd, they turned him face because the crowd, is cheering him, but give a reason. I look at some of the face turns and heel turns in AEW, and they don't necessarily make a lot of sense. And then the explanation from the wrestler after, you're like, what? So, and I know WWE has that issue as well, but it feels like it's just commonplace with AEW now, or maybe they just don't explain it. And now you're a face. They're not Italia. You can't do that with everybody. So, yeah. And that brings me to the women's division. So they spend all this money on Mercedes Moné. And Mercedes Moné is a star. She has this absolute just superstar aura about her. She, I think, could be a wrestler that is the best known. I absolutely have loved, and I was a fan of Sasha Banks for many years. I remember in NXT when she first came in, and I was like, it's another generic wrestler. And then she started doing the boss thing, and I was like, there's something there. There's something there with her. And of course, they had the big feud between her and Becky Lynch, where Becky was the underdog, the ultimate underdog, and it just worked. You know, you get the four horsewomen out of it, and it worked. There's no reason Mercedes Moné can't justify that huge contract they've given her, that apparently is like in the $10 million plus range over multiple years. It comes to more than $10 million, is what I've heard. But if you're going to justify that, well, you got to push her and you got to give her the belt sooner rather than later. And while I do like Willow Nightingale, like, I'm sorry, but you bring these people in that are really well known, and you have two choices here. You can have them gradually build their way up, which is fine, or you can have them start in the main event, which, okay, but they kind of mix both. And it feels like right now she's overshadowing the entire women's division. And understandably, but then you've got to put her in a main event spot. And while I like Willow Nightingale, I don't know that a feud with Willow is necessarily the best move. And I understand that there's previous history between them overseas, but that shouldn't drive what's going on in AEW. Which brings me to my next point, and I'll come back to the women's division again as well. But expecting casual wrestling fans, I'm not talking about your hardcore wrestling nerds on the internet. I consider myself to be a hardcore wrestling nerd from the internet. I used to actually subscribe to a newsletter, wrestling related, that I would get daily. And it was far back enough that this was back during the screw job in Montreal, that I had a newsletter that every day I was anxious to get that would tell me the behind the scenes stuff going on in WWE. So I've been doing the nerdular thing with wrestling for a very long time. But WWE and that WWE never really acknowledged it. WWE didn't get into it. The closest you get is the Brett screwed Brett interview with Vince, that whole thing, and Off the Record, which was a show on TSN, would interview wrestlers, but they did it in a way where they respected the industry. Canada definitely understands that wrestling is staged in the result, but we appreciate the amount of physicality that's required to get that result, and we respect the talent that wrestlers have. So while we're not saying that it's all 100%, oh, that's all real and yada yada yada, we also don't denigrate it. We don't look down upon pro wrestling as being this horrible, stupid thing that you have to live in a trailer park to enjoy that. Now, I lived in a trailer park, but I don't know where else to go with that. But they seem to have, they bring in Will Ospreay. Will Ospreay, great wrestler, yes. But for your casual wrestling fan in North America, will they have seen Will Ospreay a lot? I would say probably not. Will they know who he is? Sure. But again, when you bring a guy in, you got to have him like build his way up. And I think the assumption is that fans are going to know who these stars are from elsewhere, which WWE has never done. Back to when they were WWF, they would bring people in from other territories. They'd repackage them, sometimes embarrassingly repackage them, but they bring guys in from other territories and treat them like a brand new wrestler, a brand new character. And what I like is that with WWE, they will bring these guys in from, say, Mexico or from the Indies, from the UK, from Japan. They will acknowledge that past, but they make it clear that in order to make your name in WWE, you have to build your way up. And it doesn't feel like with AEW that happens for everybody, and sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, and then you get like certain wrestlers that come in for like one match and then they're gone. And it might be a major match, but then they're gone and they're never spoken of again. It's just I think it backfires, and I think this is why their ratings don't go up. I really do. And the ratings can go up because the CM Punk footage. So again, segueing into this, the backstage footage of the fight between Jack Perry and CM Punk, who in the blue hell thought that was going to be a good idea? Right, yeah, Tony Khan. Tony Khan feared for his life because one wrestler kind of half-ass choked another, and guys got involved. Why would he fear for his life? Because Punk yelled at him? Man, I've been in situations where guys are like threatening to fight each other, yelling at each other. I've never feared for my life because they weren't yelling at me, and even if they were, like I understand the wrestlers, and I'm not saying like Tony couldn't have got clocked there at some point, but at no point was anybody lunging at him or anything. So if you got really scared as the booker, as the guy in charge, because somebody yelled at you, you're in the wrong job. This is not for you. This is not where you're supposed to be. And I think that what happened there with Punk confronting Jack Perry should never have happened. WWE has always had a lot of red tape. WWE has always had you have a lot of people to go through to get your ideas pitched and all this. And sometimes that system falls apart. Sometimes there's too much red tape. But I think in AEW it's been kind of the lunatics running the asylum a little bit. And Tony not necessarily acting like a boss and wanting to be everybody's buddy. And whether that is or isn't exactly what's happening, that's at least the public perception. And then when you got CM Punk coming out and saying the things about Tony that he does, and then Tony's reaction being to show this footage that proved Punk was right, why? For what reason? Like, and if the argument is, well, it's to further the angle between FTR and the Young Bucks, are you freaking kidding me? You can't find any way to further a storyline between the Young Bucks and FTR other than this. Yeah, you can. This is lazy. This is lazy, and it's stupid, and it makes your company look like it's amateur night. And it's too bad to have to say things like that, but yeah, it just made AEW look so bad. It just made them look so stupid that they thought this footage was going to help them. It doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. Because it takes that whole statement about, I feared for my life, and makes people go, why? What point? Like, there's no sound to that CC camera footage, but there's nothing dangerous. Nobody was throwing crap around. We know that Vince has been choked in his office. Like, wasn't it Nails that choked him in his office? Anyway, that'll get you fired. That'll get you. But like Vince would stand up for himself. Vince was jacked. I mean, we all remember how jacked Vince was. Vince McMahon could handle himself if he needed to. And now you've got Triple H in charge. Yeah, good luck pushing him around in his office. I understand that he's old and he doesn't wrestle anymore. Good luck pushing him around his office. Wouldn't go very well. I don't think that'll end well for you. Plus the fact that Shawn Michaels is working at NXT and everything, and I wouldn't necessarily tangle with Shawn either. But they don't have that in AEW. They don't. Like, you have Tony Khan, and then what? You have the Young Bucks running around with their EVP characters, which are entertaining. I'm not saying they're not. But to me, I've never really viewed the Young Bucks as being a needle mover either. I don't know that anybody watching AEW would go, well, I watched this for the Young Bucks. And I think that's part of it too. Who are you watching the show for? Because right now, if I watch WWE, I can name off 5 or 6 different wrestlers I'm watching for. When I go to watch a WWE event, and I went and watched SmackDown Live, I was excited to see Randy Orton so many years after the first time I'd seen him. I thought that was great. And to see how different his mannerisms and the way he carries himself are now from when I saw him all those years ago in a match against Edge, where they were both pretty young. And you could tell that Orton was young and a little bit ornery and not necessarily quite as personable, and now he's just really cool and calm and collected. And obviously you have The Rock, you have Stone Cold, and you have The Undertaker, and all this stuff that can happen at a WWE event you don't have with an AEW event. You just don't have that. You can see Sting, sure, but AEW doesn't have the drawing. They don't have the ability to draw, which would be fine if their booking decisions were good. So now you have a show where the wrestling is still good. The wrestlers themselves are good, but the booking, the matches, doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. A lot of random matches. A lot of, where'd this come from? Why is that? Why is the title on the line there, but it's not on the line there? Okay, so you had a ranking system. You did away with it. Now you're bringing the rankings back. But meanwhile, this person lost a couple weeks ago. They lost again last week. Now they're getting a title shot. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And so for wrestling fans, it doesn't make sense. For casuals who don't necessarily care about any of that, there's no star power, consistent star power to bring them in. There isn't a Roman Reigns. There isn't somebody that they've built to be that superstar, which they could have done with Jade Cargill if they'd done it right. Instead, they saddled Jade Cargill with a stable, because everybody's in a stable, which I don't think helps the company either. Because then almost anything can end up in a schmoz where you got 4 on one side and 4 on the other, which again can be fun for a while, but not everybody should be in a stable. Not everybody should have a stable. It just doesn't work. You've got to have wrestlers who are on their own, and Jade should have been on her own. Shouldn't have even had a manager. She should have been coming out and doing the Goldberg thing. If they were going to commit to the winning streak, then commit to it and just have her come out on her own, destroy people and leave. Have her every now and then. She comes out and chucks a man around, picks a dude up, drops him, gives him the jaded, something like that, right? But they haven't done that. They had it with Wardlow, and then it just stopped. They had it. Wardlow was the guy, and I was like, this is the guy who could be their Goldberg, and then they killed it. And now he's a heel again, and when Jack Hager came in, I thought, okay, Hager's finally going to get, or Jake Hager, sorry, it was Jack Swagger and I messed it up. Jake Hager comes in, and I thought, good, he's going to get a run. This should be great for him. Nope. They continually botch it. Miro, the former Rusev, he's an absolute beast in the ring. He can do almost anything. Nope. They killed it. They made him, they had the whole gaming thing and video games, and it's like, what are you doing? Like, if this is who Miro is for real outside the ring, fine. But that shouldn't be part of the on-TV product. You don't see Xavier Woods coming out in WWE carrying a controller. And you don't see him going, watch up, down, down. Hey, everybody, watch up, down, down. Because we know that exists. When he goes out there, he's the WWE character. The up, down, down channel is separate. So Rusev's whole gaming and all that he does shouldn't be part of his wrestling persona, because he's supposed to be a monster. He is supposed to be intimidating. And what's more intimidating than a guy sitting backstage playing video games? Right. Yeah. And the titles. I don't know where to go with the titles. I feel like the titles don't necessarily mean very much. And I hate to say that, but it just feels like they don't mean a lot. I think the ROH edition and all those titles and these guys moving the titles around as often as the titles don't seem to matter. MJF did his damnedest to make that title matter. And I'm not saying Samoa Joe's a bad champion or anything, but for me personally, I look at that and I think, all right, but who's next though? Because I don't know that Samoa Joe's a guy who's going to hold the title for an extended period of time. Maybe he does. But what I've seen with the titles is they don't necessarily matter very much. There were times where I would see somebody win a title and think, good, they're going to get a run, and oh, it's gone already. Okay, which is WCW stuff. And what scares me is there's a lot of the things that AEW is doing right now that really remind me of WCW. WCW had diamonds in the rough down the stretch. They did. Their last 6 months to a year, they had wrestlers there that were actually pretty darn good. Never got anywhere. And WWE takes over, and all of a sudden, Shane Helms becomes the Hurricane, and that worked. That worked. It was great. And that's just one example. And I can talk about the WCW being bought by WWE and the mistakes WWE had with that. But it feels like we're in a similar place right now with AEW where we were with WCW. The difference being WCW got taken down because they were on at the same time as WWE, and their product was noticeably worse. In this case, AEW is just losing fans. They're just losing viewers. And the decisions that they're making are making it worse. Like, I at least once, twice, 3, 4 times, it feels like every week something happens in AEW where I go, why? Why did that happen? And a lot of it is, this person's a heel, this person's a face. Why did they do that, and why did they do that? Like, why? The only example I can think of about that with WWE, and it's nitpicking, I have to nitpick to find it with WWE, is at WrestleMania, CM Punk taking off that arm brace and beating Drew McIntyre with it, because that's a heel move. That's something a heel would do, not a face. And so seeing that, I thought, well, wait a minute. So Drew's the heel and Punk's the face, but him needing the brace to beat him up, and then Damian Priest comes out, he's a heel, and he beats the heel for the title, and the face CM Punk celebrates. So that was the one that kind of confused me, but I understand that Priest is going to turn face. He's going to leave Judgment Day, which is a fantastic storyline. And CM Punk could very well end up turning heel. CM Punk is always on the verge of turning heel. I think he's naturally a heel. So him using the brace is not out of character. It's just a little bit confusing as to who am I supposed to be rooting for in this moment, because I'm kind of rooting for Drew. And I've had that experience where I'm kind of rooting for Drew McIntyre, and everything he's saying, I get it. I totally get it. And a good heel, a good villain, you can understand where they're coming from. And again, coming back to AEW, there's times where I just shrug. Now, going years back to when I would talk about WCW, or see, you did it, AEW versus WWE, I would talk about the booking and how Vince's booking was terrible and Vince was pushing the wrong wrestlers. Well, now Triple H is in charge. Triple H is pushing the right wrestlers. Triple H at Mania showed what he can do. And now Stephanie has been out in front of the crowd too. And we all love Stephanie. Basically, Stephanie McMahon's gone from, oh, she's there because she's a McMahon. She's the one that survived. She's the one that's still there. Vince's persona non grata. He's done. Shane, I think, is just finished with the whole thing. I don't think Shane has any interest at this point. But yeah, Stephanie's still there. And people love her. The reaction she got on night 2 of WrestleMania, people genuinely really like Steph. And I don't think people like Tony Khan. Tony Khan is not a great booker. Tony Khan's not a great speaker. Tony Khan is, I think, a really good wrestling fan who got the company and didn't really know how to do this. Even watching AEW has been reminding me of when I was a kid and creating wrestlers in my little imaginary world here, and figuring out, you know, what I was doing then that AEW doesn't do, and thinking to myself, was I a better booker at 14 with people that didn't exist than AEW is in 2024 with people who do? So at some point I want to talk about that. I've talked about my hockey league on the Hockey Channel a lot. I've never really talked about the wrestling league that I created and all that. But I do want to do that. I do want to do a video on that and talk about how I would create wrestlers and how I would build them up and how that all worked. And of course, I had jobbers. I had people that had various roles and people at various levels, and I would do a gradual build. And I don't think AEW really does that. So that's part of the problem too. You should be building anticipation and the idea of, hey, are these guys going to fight or what? And WWE does that really, really well. But I haven't seen that with AEW. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And hey, I hope they figure it out, because I love the wrestlers in AEW. There's a lot of good, promising talent there. I just don't know if I trust the guy at the helm to realize what that talent can do for him. And I think it's costing him money. Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I will talk to you again soon.